Are you money conscious? Probably want to ask yourself, what does that even mean,
What does
right?
that mean,
Well,
David?
that's what we're gonna be talking about today. This is episode 32 of the Queer Money Follow Up. We have been doing this for over a month straight now, every single day, and we are covering the 32nd episode of the Queer Money Podcast, where we were talking about being money conscious, which was the first principle in our book for the 4 principles of a debt-free life. You can get a copy of the book by clicking on the link down below. But we went on a 4-part series here talking about these 4 principles and what these 4 principles are and what they did for us. So we're going to cover that a little bit today, covering some of this of a similar topic, but kind of throwing in some new flavor in here. So make sure that you subscribe and join our channel. We really appreciate it. So as I mentioned, we are kicking this off. This is the first in our series of covering these 4 principles of a debt-free life. If you don't know our backstory, John and I, at one point in time, had a come to financial Jesus moment.
Jesus.
Yeah. Where we confessed to each other that between the two of us, we had $51,000 in credit card debt.
Yikes.
We were financial messes. And the sad part about it is that at the same time, we had 13 years of experience in financial services. It's so crazy to think back to that time period of here we were working in financial services, helping other people with their money, telling people what they should be doing or could be doing to live a better life and plan for a better future. And it was just all out the door for us.
But that
right?
happens, so often, right? Like if you're a chef, your kids are eating takeout. If
Right.
you're a cobbler, your kids have no shoes. It happens a lot. And I used to do compliance for financial services firms and would have to review advisors that we were onboarding and look at their backstory. And so many of them had filed for bankruptcy or debt settlements and all sorts of egregious things that you would not assume that a financial advisor would do. So we're not an isolated case. We were just probably the most open about it.
Right. Yeah. It's like you said, with every industry, there are people who do exactly what they say that they want to do in their industry, and there are those people who let it go, right, and who don't actually do it. Plumbers who don't have their plumbing up to date, like you said, cobblers whose kids have no shoes, right? So the first principle in our book was money conscious, becoming money conscious, or how to be money conscious, and I want to ask you what you think that means. What does it mean to be conscious? Well, I think we all know what it's like to be unconscious, right? Well, maybe, I guess when we sleep, but we've all seen somebody who's been knocked out, whether it's on TV in a movie or on a fight or something like that. We know what it means when somebody is knocked out and is completely unconscious. Well, that isn't necessarily the case with being unconscious about money. There's another way of being unconscious, and that is just not paying attention to your surroundings or ignoring what is going on. One of the examples that I like to use when I talk about being unconscious and being alert, or being, I don't want to say being alert, but being awake, so to speak, is the example that most of us have had, and that is when we're driving down the street, we are either listening to the kids in the back seat, or we're playing with the radio, or whatever, something is going on. We go through an intersection, and after going through that intersection, we think to ourselves, oh my God, was that a green light or a red light? We just were so distracted that we aren't paying attention to actually what it is we're doing. I mean, it's so common, right? Especially if you're driving down a road that you drive down a lot, right? It's so common to drive down this road and just kind of be in automatic, you're kind of on auto drive, and you're just going, right? And you're not necessarily truly being alert and paying attention. And the same thing can happen with money, right? We were talking about this before. What really has changed in the last 5 years from when we recorded episode 32 back in early 2017 to what is going on today? What has really changed? And I think when you really look at when it comes to money, especially when it comes to spending, companies want to make it as easy as possible for us to spend, right?
Yeah, I think of that one-click button on Amazon.com that it took me a couple of years to figure out how to stop doing.
Yeah,
So it was, all of a sudden I was like, wow, I just bought something I didn't necessarily intend on, but it's already on its way, so let's just keep it there.
Right.
So they've made it so easy and painless. And that's their, not only have we made everything in our lives affordable by low monthly payments, whether it's a house, a car, education, furniture, whatever. But now it's so easy to buy things. There's like it's one click. And in fact, Amazon has mastered this, right? You can put that thing on. I forget what they call it. But you can put those little devices all over your house, on your washing machine and on your refrigerator, and just click a button, and it sends a notification to Amazon that you need laundry detergent.
Yeah.
And so you don't even need to look for the laundry detergent. You don't even need to go in and log into your account. You just click that button, and it's like your laundry detergent's coming. And yes, it makes your life easier. And yes, you're less inclined to go without, go a period of time without having laundry detergent. But
Heaven forbid.
it's also it's so unconscious.
Right.
And so is everybody balancing their checkbook or balancing their ledger every month after they've made all these unconscious expenses to itemize and make sure that they know that they're not spending more than they're bringing in? Highly doubt it.
Right.
At least we weren't.
I mean, when you think back to the way it used to be, way back in days of yore. That's one of our favorite words or sayings, is using the way back in yore, right? The idea was that you would either get your wallet out, or you would take something physical and exchange it for the product that you wanted, right? Whether it was trading your goat for the 2 bushels of apples,
really
right? Right. That's way your, right? Or then when money came about, exchanging the money for the product that you want.
Well, what's that statistic that you always quote? The increase in how much you spend relative with cash relative to credit card relative to debit card.
Right. So they found that individuals who use cash will spend less than people who use a debit card, and spend less than people who use a credit card. People who use a credit card will spend 18% more in the same scenario. People who use a debit card will spend 12% more than if they were using cash, which just kind of removes that speed bump of, okay, do I have enough money, right? If you are we always use the example, if you're out to dinner and you only have $35 in your wallet, and there are 3 things on the menu that you want, and they total $32, you're not going to get all 3 because you just simply can't afford it, because you won't be able to pay the tax and be able to tip the wait staff, right? You make that conscious decision to spend less. But when we have our debit card and we know that we have $45 to spend, no problem. And then when we have a credit card, we're like, well, let's throw in a bottle of wine and spend $60 instead, right? I mean, that's kind of really what happened. A lot of times happened to us.
Well, and I would argue that for a lot of gay men, this is probably the case. You go out with your friends, you really had no intention of buying dinner, but suddenly you want to feel a little bit extra special. You want to kind of feed your ego a little bit, even though you might not necessarily consciously get that. And you just say, you know what? I'm going to put this entire bill, whatever it is, $100, $400 meal, on my credit card, and everybody's going to love me. I'm going to get all the adulation.
Right.
And how many times, even just doing that once, how far does that set you back? I know that we've been culpable of that. And at the time, we wouldn't have said that we were feeding our ego or that we were trying to make up for any pain or anxiety. But it's only in hindsight that we realize that we were doing that. So I wonder how many gay men are in that situation.
Yeah, and I remember one of the things, reflecting and looking back, one of the things that I used to do regularly was pay for dinner, pay for people to get into clubs, pay for rounds of shots, buy somebody a drink. And looking back on it now, I realize I wasn't actually truly being generous. I felt like people wouldn't like me unless I did something like that. So it was an insecurity in me that made me do that. Speaking of insecurities, in this particular episode on the Queer Money Podcast, episode 32, go and listen to it, because John and I, we tell the story of when John made a huge $500 money blunder, and
You facilitated,
right,
sir.
I facilitated it by running 3
You
red
were my
lights.
enabler.
So this is a short episode. Go listen to this episode, because it's actually a crazy story that I'm sure is not the first time it has happened to somebody in our community.
Not at all.
Right. So we said that we wanted to talk about being money conscious. And what is being money conscious? Well, obviously, being money conscious is being more aware of what you do with your money. So there are 3 steps to really becoming money conscious. And the first
All of
one,
which you can get in this lovely book, The 4 Principles of a Debt-Free Life.
There are 3 primary steps to becoming money conscious, and the first one is actually our money quote for this particular episode, and that is understanding that there are consequences to how we spend our money, either today or tomorrow. Now, I think that many of us can kind of understand that, right? What are these consequences to the way we spend our money? Well, if it's a short-term one, I spend $100 more than what I have, I may not be able to pay a bill. I may not be able to have money for food for the end of the month. I mean, how many people have said this? I have more money than I have in month, right? I mean, I'm sorry, other way around. There's more money than there is month, right?
There's more month left over at the end of my money.
Yes, thank you.
It's a good thing I'm here.
And I think that so many of us are familiar with that, but we don't actually really integrate it into or think about it in our lives. The consequences. Think about the long-term consequences. I always like to say that no one gets rich spending more money than they make. Nobody gets rich spending all the money that they make. The people who actually get rich are the people who spend less than they make and save for the future, either save or save and invest. So the long-term consequences, the consequences of tomorrow, is that you'll have money for retirement. You'll have money for a down payment on a house. You'll have emergency savings when something happens. If we don't think about the consequences of our spending today, we will be forced into dealing with the consequences tomorrow.
Exactly.
All right, so that was number 1. Step number 2 is, I think, one where a lot of us are unconscious, but
A lot of us lie to ourselves.
yeah,
about
I
this.
think that's really what this one is.
Or I think we're afraid to find out the truth, so we don't actually dig deep.
Yeah, and that is, how much money do we really make, right? A lot of us love to inflate those numbers when we go to cocktail parties and we tell people, oh, yeah, I got a $10,000 raise and I'm making $100,000. Well,
But are you?
in reality, are you?
Have you done the math?
Yeah. How much money do you truly bring home? Right? A lot of people say, oh, well, let's see here. I make $60,000. That's $5,000 a month. I can spend $5,000 a month. Bullshit. You can't spend $5,000 a month unless you're going to go into debt. Just
Right. Unless you're not paying your taxes, you're going to go to federal jail.
You're not paying for the benefits that your employer takes out. Right. There's all sorts of things that come out of your paycheck that just bring that number down. And this is exactly one of the things that we were doing. We were spending more money than we make because we were just clueless as to how much money was actually coming in.
We were spending according to the stated salary of our employer, even probably over that amount. We weren't factoring in all of the subtracting out all the expenses that go with working and go with living in this country.
Right. And a great example of this is when we would get either a bonus or we would get a tax return, or maybe we got an annual salary increase. And we knew what that number was, right? So bonus was, let's just say, $3,000, or the tax return is $2,500, or the salary increase meant I was going to be making an extra $150 a month. We would spend all of that, right? We would spend all $3,000 of the bonus, but we also would forget that 40% of that bonus is going to come out right away in taxes, right?
That bastard.
Exactly. So it was really, we were actually getting $1,800, but we spent $3,000. Where'd that money go? on the credit cards. When we get the tax return, exact same thing. You get the tax return. Oftentimes you have spent that money long before you get it, and then you more often than not spend more than actually what you're going to get back. That number shouldn't fluctuate. That number shouldn't change. But the same thing with the monthly salary increase. You know, if you think you're going to be making an extra $100 a month, you may go out and purchase a new vehicle thinking that you're going to have an extra $100 a month coming into your paycheck. Or you may go out and buy a new phone and add to your phone plan and up that by $30, $40, $50 a month, right? So there's all those kinds of purchases that we become unconscious about.
We just aren't aware of, right?
Right.
We are all excited. We get that fat round number and we're like, I'm just going to spend it.
Yep, exactly.
Because I can, but you can't.
Yep.
Tip number 3.
All right, tip number 3 is knowing where your money goes when you spend it.
We talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, so few people, even us, sometimes even today, are aware of what 100% where our money goes. And that's, I think, a lot of times because we want to stick our heads in the sand when it comes to where our money really is at.
Exactly. We don't stick our heads in the sand anymore.
Yeah. And I also think that it's a wake-up call, right? When we have walked people through our spending analysis when the members of our credit card payoff course go through the spending analysis process, they are shocked at how much money they're spending on various categories that they didn't think that they were spending a lot of money in.
Right. Every single person who's gone through that spending analysis, as arduous as it is, has come back with their eyes open.
Right, exactly.
And what it actually does is it shows an opportunity of, well, because I think we might have said this before. Most people have 1 to 3 outliers in their spending that if they just rein that in a little bit or even eliminate it altogether because they don't necessarily need it or might not necessarily need it, that provides a lot of opportunity to help pay off debt or achieve other financial goals that you might have.
Exactly. So what's the result of becoming money conscious? Well, I'll share our result. Our result was that when we were unconscious about our money spending and we finally got to our aha moment where we said, okay, this isn't working. We're not going to have a great future. At that moment in time, between the two of us, we had basically a negative net worth of about $10,000. Between the two of us, we probably had about $60,000 in our 401ks, in our retirement accounts. But we had other way around. We had about $40,000 in our 401ks, but then we had $50,000, $51,000 in credit card debt, which meant we had a negative net worth. Today, as of the beginning of 2021, we have over $1 million in our retirement accounts. All of that is because we became money conscious, realized that it was important for us to be aware and understand the consequences of our spending, really get crystal clear about how much money we were bringing in, making sure that when we were spending, we weren't spending more, we were actually spending less than what we made, and turn around and put that money into our retirement accounts. So over the last roughly 15 years, we went from basically negative net worth, negative $10,000, to over $1 million by just tweaking the way we think about money and becoming more conscious about it.
Exactly. I think when people hear that number, we went from a negative net worth to a positive net worth of $1 million. It sounds huge and like there must have been something cataclysmic that happened to completely change our entire situation. And there was really there wasn't one monumental event that changed everything for us. It was simply, number one, becoming money conscious and making those tweaks that you just outlined. And then over the last 15 years, it's been a series of small conscious steps, whether it's making an investment decision, it's making an investment at all, it's declining, making an expense, or it's reducing an expense. It's avoiding making certain life choices that weren't necessarily aligned with what our personal goals, objectives, and purpose are, just because somebody else or other people think that they're necessary. It's just a series of conscious decisions, little conscious decisions over time.
Yeah, exactly.
So those 3 steps to becoming money conscious are: 1, start understanding that your spending today affects your today and tomorrow. 2, understand how much you actually make, how much you actually bring home. It's not always that stated salary that your boss sells you on. And 3, know where your money is going. And the best way to do that is to do a spending analysis similar to what we talked about in episode 31 of this series.
All right. So here's your Queer Money follow-up takeaway. Go get a copy of our book, The Four Principles of a Debt-Free Life, that you can find in the link in the comments below. And then come back tomorrow. Join us for episode 2 in this 4-part series of the principles of a debt-free life, where we talk about the one thing that rich people do that you probably are not doing.
Exactly.
And again, do us a favor, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn notifications on so you know when we go live. Thanks again, and have a great day.